Over 500 years ago, 3 small ships appeared on the edge of a world that didn't even know they existed. From distant shores, people watched white sails rise from the horizon, carrying men who thought they'd reached Asia, but hadn't. What they found instead would change the course of history forever. But before that discovery, there was fear. In 1492, on the docks of Palos de la Frontera, sailors whispered prayers and curses as they prepared to sail into a sea no one truly understood. At the centre stood one man, Christopher Columbus, eyes fixed on the horizon, convinced the world was smaller than everyone believed. Before we begin, let me know where you're listening from, and whether you were ever taught this part of the story in school. You might want to get comfortable for this one, because tonight we're setting sail across the ocean with him, through storms, mutiny, and the moment the world changed forever. All right, let's begin the voyage. The year is 1492. Spain hums with change. The Moors have been driven from Granada. Queen Isabella's banners hang proudly above Alhambra's white towers, and whispers of empire drift through the halls of Castile. But at a small port called Palos de la Frontera, far from the royal palaces, something quieter is happening. Dawn spills across the harbour in shades of pale gold and grey. Seagulls wheel overhead. The air smells of tar, salt, and the faint sweetness of oranges from a nearby stall. Fishermen shout to one another, hauling nets heavy with sardines. Somewhere a church bell tolls, slow, deliberate, echoing across the water. Tied to the docks are 3 ships, the Niña, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria. They're small, cramped, built for coastal trade, not for the open ocean. Yet here they wait, sails furled, their hulls groaning softly against the tide, ready to attempt something no one in Europe has ever truly done before. The crew moves nervously, their faces a blend of fear and curiosity. Rough men from Andalusia and beyond, sailors, ex-convicts, drifters promised pardon and pay if they survive. They laugh too loudly, check their rosaries too often. Some wear tiny charms carved from bone. Others mutter superstitions about sea monsters and edges of the earth. For most of them, the Atlantic isn't a road, it's a void, a place where ships vanish. Columbus walks among them, cloak brushing against the damp planks. He's not Spanish by birth. He was born Cristoforo Colombo in Genoa decades ago, the son of a wool weaver. Not a nobleman, not a scholar, but a man consumed by a single impossible idea, that the world is smaller than they think, and that the riches of Asia can be reached not by sailing east, but west. For years his proposal was mocked, rejected, laughed out of courts. He'd begged kings, argued with scholars, endured sneers from those who believed his math was madness. And yet here he stands, 39 years old, weathered by failure but unbroken, about to prove them all wrong. He gazes at the ships, eyes flicking between them like a man measuring fate. He knows every creak of the Santa Maria, his flagship, the largest of the 3, though barely more than 100 feet long. The Niña and Pinta are faster, lighter, but prone to splinter in heavy seas. Their captains, the Pinzon brothers, are skilled sailors, but not believers. They follow him not out of faith, but opportunity. Behind him, priests murmur blessings. A crowd has gathered along the pier, wives clutching their husbands, mothers holding children who may never see their fathers again. Some cry quietly, others simply stare. "God guide you," one woman whispers as a sailor passes. He doesn't look back. The church bell rings again. louder now, more urgent. Columbus steps onto the gangplank. The deck creaks beneath his boots. The ship sways gently, alive, restless. On the dock, the Queen's messenger raises a parchment, the royal order granting this voyage her blessing. The crowd murmurs prayers as the sails are unfurled, snapping in the morning breeze. The wind is good, the tide is rising, there's no turning back. Columbus raises his hand. "Cast off," he commands. Ropes are loosened, the wood moans, and slowly, painfully, the ships begin to drift from shore. Oars dip into water. The sound of creaking timbers echoes through the harbour. The people of Palos watch in silence as the three ships slide toward the horizon, growing smaller, their sails glowing like ghosts against the morning light. On deck, Columbus turns toward land one final time. He presses his hand against the worn wood of the railing as if memorizing the feeling of home. The last thing he sees is the faint white line of a chapel's tower and the flag of Castile fluttering in the distance. The men around him are quiet now. Only the groan of the ship fills the air. The water darkens. The shore vanishes. He knows what they're thinking, that they may never see Spain again, that if he's wrong, if the earth isn't as small as he believes, they'll die here, swallowed by the sea. But Columbus doesn't flinch. He grips the rail and stares west, into the blinding shimmer of the sun, into the unknown. The wind carries the scent of salt and destiny. "Hold steady," he says quietly, "to the Indies." The Santa Maria tilts as the waves rise beneath her. The men pull the ropes tighter, their hands blistering, their minds somewhere between prayer and fear. Hours pass. The coastline fades completely. The world becomes nothing but blue and white, sky and sea. The sailors glance at the compass, the endless horizon. They whisper to each other when they think the captain isn't listening. One man jokes that they've already sailed off the edge. No one laughs. That night, as darkness falls, you lie on the deck and listen. The ocean moves beneath you like something alive, slow, breathing, ancient. The stars come out one by one, sharp and cold. Columbus walks the deck in silence, watching them. His faith is unshakable. He believes God has chosen him for this, to bridge worlds, to change history. The waves slap against the hull, steady as a heartbeat. Somewhere in the dark, a sailor begins to sing softly in Spanish, a broken tune carried by the wind. The ships sail on into the night. The voyage has begun. The first days at sea are filled with noise and motion. The men shout, laugh, curse. The sails snap like thunder as the wind fills them. Ropes strain, gulls circle overhead, and the ships surge forward, riding the current with purpose. Spain fades behind them, a distant smear of coastline vanishing into pale morning haze. For a time, it feels almost easy. The sea is kind, the sky bright. The men eat well, sing old tavern songs, and speak of gold waiting across the horizon. Columbus moves among them with calm confidence, his coat stiff with salt, his voice steady. Asia is close, he says, just a few weeks. But days turn to weeks, and the wind begins to shift. The ocean becomes heavier, deeper, quieter. The colour changes, darkening from blue to a kind of endless green. The smell grows stale, the laughter dies away. The Niña's captain, Vicente Pinzon, keeps his men busy patching sails and scraping salt from the deck. He knows idleness breeds fear. On the Santa Maria, Columbus studies the compass again and again, his brow furrowed. The needle drifts oddly westward each night, refusing to settle. He doesn't tell the men. Instead, he alters the log, quietly recording fewer miles they've actually travelled to make it seem as if land must be near. The days stretch longer. The sky grows empty. No birds, no driftwood, no sign of life, only the endless breathing of the sea. At first, the men joke that they'll reach paradise itself, but soon the jokes fade. Their world has become a circle of water with no edges. Morning and night look the same. Some of them start waking from dreams in panic, swearing they heard waves breaking on unseen shores. Others stare at the horizon for hours, muttering that it's all a lie, that they've sailed beyond the limits of the earth. Columbus walks among them, listening but saying little. His faith is steady, at least outwardly. Inside, doubt creeps at the edges of his mind like a shadow he can't quite shake. On the 14th day, the wind dies completely. The sails hang limp, useless. The ships drift without direction, rocking gently on the glassy surface. The sun burns through the still air, sweat beads on every face. The ocean becomes a mirror, silent, endless, suffocating. The men grow restless. Voices rise. Someone curses under his breath. Another spits overboard, whispering that the sea is cursed. Columbus orders prayers, hymns to break the silence, but they sound thin against the empty horizon. That night, the moon rises red. The sea glows faintly beneath it, and strange lights flicker on the water, pale and moving like lanterns deep below the surface. The men refuse to sleep. They whisper of demons, of the souls of drowned sailors, of the edge of the world itself. One swears he saw a hand reach from the sea. Another claims to hear voices calling his name. By morning the wind returns, but it carries with it dark clouds. The storm comes fast. A wall of wind and rain crashes across the deck. The Pinta vanishes in mist, her lantern swinging wildly in the distance. The Niña fights to stay upright, her mast screaming under the strain. Men are thrown from their feet, barrels roll loose. The world becomes chaos, the ocean roaring, the sky split by lightning. Columbus clings to the railing, shouting orders drowned by thunder. For hours they fight. Buckets move hand to hand. Water floods the lower decks. The helmsman's hands bleed on the wheel. One man slips, screams, and disappears into black water, swallowed before anyone can move. When dawn comes, the sea is calm again. The Pinta is still in sight, barely, her sails torn. The men are silent, eyes hollow. Salt crusts their skin. No one speaks for a long time. Columbus writes in his journal that morning, his letters shaky, ink blotted by the ship's motion. We met great storms upon the ocean, but we did not falter. The men cry to return, yet I am resolved. God will show us land. He closes the book, pressing his palm against the damp leather cover. For a long moment he just listens. The creak of wood, the faint groan of ropes, the rhythm of waves below. The world feels endless. Food begins to spoil. The biscuits crawl with weevils. The water barrels reek of mould. The men eat in silence, eyes sunken, hands trembling. Some cross themselves before each bite. Others refuse to eat at all. Rumours spread that Columbus hides provisions for himself, that he's leading them to nowhere, that he's possessed. One night, you hear them whispering in the dark, quiet voices under the stars. They talk of turning back, of forcing the captains to reverse course, of throwing Columbus overboard and claiming they were lost. The captain of the Pinta, Martin Pinzon, listens but says nothing. He's beginning to wonder too. Whether this mad Genoese sailor truly knows what he's doing. Columbus senses it. He can feel the tension growing like a storm he cannot control. So he speaks of faith. He gathers the men at dawn and promises land soon. "A few more days," he says. "I can feel it." The men nod, but their eyes are empty. The ocean stretches endlessly. The sun rises, sets, rises again. Days pass. The sky changes colour. Softer now, the clouds forming strange patterns. A few seabirds appear, faint and distant. The men shout in excitement. Columbus smiles for the first time in weeks. That night they find seaweed floating thick across the water, a green carpet stretching for miles. The men believe it's a sign of land. They reach for it, hold it in their hands, smell the wet earth caught in its roots. Hope returns like breath after drowning. But morning comes, and there's still only water. The seaweed drifts away. The birds vanish. Hope fades again. Columbus remains calm, outwardly. But in his cabin, alone with the flicker of the lamp, he feels it too. The weight of every mile, the sound of the sea pressing against the hull like a question with no answer. He kneels and prays, for strength, for wind, for a sign, for anything. Outside, the men sleep uneasily, their dreams filled with visions of home, their wives, their children, the smell of bread and warm air. When they wake, the sea is still there, endless, indifferent. Each sunrise is another test, each sunset another reminder of how far they've gone. The voyage has crossed the point of no return. They've sailed too far to turn back now. The world grows silent, and the ocean waits. The 11th of September, 1492. The wind has returned, but it carries no comfort. It's sharp, uneven, pushing the ships forward 1 hour, turning against them the next. The men no longer sing. The laughter that once filled the decks has been replaced by the heavy silence of survival. The ocean seems endless, like a punishment with no end. Days melt into one another until time itself feels uncertain. The only rhythm left is the groan of timber and the slow slap of waves against the hull. Columbus walks the deck at dawn, his face drawn, eyes fixed on the horizon. He pretends confidence, but even his voice has begun to fade, quieter now, more fragile than before. He knows what's coming. The murmurs have turned into talk. Below deck, the men gather in the dim light of the lanterns, their whispers mixing with the sound of dripping water. One sailor says they've been deceived, that the distances in the captain's log are false. Another swears he saw Columbus change the figures with his own eyes. "He'll kill us all," someone mutters. Martin Pinzon, captain of the Cinta, listens quietly. He's not a man easily swayed, but even he has begun to question the direction, the charts, the endless sea. He looks out across the darkness and wonders how many days it would take to turn back, whether they'd survive the return. But it's too late for that. The wind has carried them deep into the unknown, further than any sailor in Europe has gone. By mid-September, fear begins to twist into anger. A sailor refuses to work the ropes. Another threatens to throw the compasses overboard, shouting that they're cursed. Columbus stands before them, calm as ever, his voice steady though his heart is pounding. "You will see land soon," he says. "I promise you. God guides us." He orders the men double rations of wine that night. It quiets them for a time, but not for long. The days grow strange. Birds appear again, small, dark, darting across the waves. The men cheer, pointing at them, shouting that they must be near land. Columbus smiles, seizing the moment. He orders one of the sailors to follow their flight path, believing it will lead west toward salvation. For 3 days they follow the birds, but there is nothing. The sea remains endless. Hope cracks like a rope under strain. On the Niña, tempers flare. A sailor swings a rope at another's head. The captain intervenes, shoving them apart. "Save your strength," he growls. "You'll need it soon enough." By the last week of September, the ships are ghostly. Pale sails streaked with salt, wood blistered from constant wet. The men's clothes are stiff with grime, their faces hollow from sleepless nights. Columbus continues to record false distances in his secret log. He cannot let them know how far they've truly come. He prays constantly. Small private prayers whispered between his teeth, barely audible over the sea. On the evening of October 9th, the tension snaps. A group of sailors confronts him on deck, their faces pale in the moonlight. They demand he turn back. They speak of wives, children, of promises broken and lives wasted. "We've sailed into nowhere," one shouts. Another, trembling, grips the handle of a knife. The ship rocks slowly beneath them, the ropes creaking like the heartbeat of something alive. Columbus looks from one man to the next, seeing fear, exhaustion, and something close to madness. He raises his hands. 3 more days, he says quietly. "If we do not find land, we will turn back. I swear it." The men stare at him, uncertain. The captain of the Niña nods. Pinzon crosses himself. The agreement is made. Columbus retreats to his cabin after the crowd disperses. The candle flickers in the draught as he opens his journal. His handwriting trembles as he writes, "If God does not show us land within 3 days, we are lost." He closes the book and sets it aside. His eyes sting from salt and sleeplessness. For a long time he simply sits in silence, listening to the wood breathe around him. The sea presses against the hull in long rhythmic sighs. That night, the air changes. The wind softens. The smell shifts, faintly, almost imperceptibly. The sailors notice it first. The sea no longer smells sharp and clean, but earthy, green, alive. Around midnight, a sailor on the Pinta shouts that he's seen a light, a faint flickering glow far in the distance, like a lantern moving in the dark. The others rush to see, but it vanishes almost as quickly as it appeared. They argue about it for hours, whether it was real, whether it was a trick of exhaustion. Columbus believes. He writes again in his journal, "The admiral saw a light. He believes land is near." The men go to sleep uneasy, their hearts pulled between hope and disbelief. The next night, October 11th, the sea is calm, unnervingly so. The ships drift through darkness like ghosts. The moonlight gleams on the water. Then, just before dawn, a cry breaks the silence. "Tierra! Tierra! Land! Land!" It comes from the Pinta. The lookout, Rodrigo de Triana, points into the darkness, shouting again and again, tears in his voice. The deck erupts in chaos. Men shout, fall to their knees, embrace one another, some laughing, some weeping. After more than 2 months of emptiness, there is finally something ahead. Faint, shadowed, but real. Columbus rushes to the bow, gripping the railing, eyes straining against the dark. And there, just visible in the faint first light, a line on the horizon, a shape, land. The men fall to their knees, crying out prayers, thanking God. Some kiss the deck, others stare in silence, too weak to speak. Columbus lowers his head. He does not weep. He only whispers, "The Lord has delivered." As dawn breaks, the first shore of the new world comes into view, soft, green, untouched. Palm trees shimmer in the rising sun. The air smells of earth, flowers, and something entirely new. The men look on in awe. They think they've reached Asia. They haven't. The world has changed. Dawn breaks on October 12th, 1492. The air's heavy with humidity, the light soft and gold. For the first time in over 2 months, the men aboard the Santa Maria, Pinta and Nina smell something they had nearly forgotten. The scent of land, wet earth, green things, life. The shore ahead glows beneath the rising sun, a strip of pale sand fringed by tall trees that shimmer with dew. The sea around them is shallow now, calm, clear as glass. Fish dart beneath the surface, flashes of silver light. The men stand in silence, staring. Some whisper prayers. Others laugh softly, as though afraid to break the spell. Columbus watches from the deck, his face unreadable. He grips the railing, knuckles white. This moment is what he's imagined for years. The edge of the known world, the dream made real. They lower the small boats and row toward the shore. Oars dip quietly into the water. The sound of waves against wood feels impossibly gentle after so many violent nights. When the boats scrape the sand, no one moves at first. They simply stare. Then Columbus steps forward. He wades through the shallows, the warm water swirling round his legs, and kneels on the beach. He presses his forehead to the sand. The others follow, some weeping openly, others shouting Gloria a Dios until their voices crack. Columbus rises slowly and unfurls the royal banner of Castile. The white and red fabric snaps faintly in the breeze. In the name of our sovereigns, he declares, his voice steady though his hands tremble, I claim this land for Spain. The others cheer weakly. They do not know where they are, only that they've survived. Columbus names the island San Salvador. The ground beneath their feet feels strange, soft, alive. The trees hum with insects, their trunks wrapped in vines. Birds call from above, colours the men have never seen before. The air is thick with the smell of fruit, flowers, salt, and something sweet and unfamiliar. They wander inland, wide-eyed, touching everything, bark, leaves, stones, as though trying to convince themselves it's real. And then, from between the trees, they see them, people, naked except for small ornaments of gold around their necks, their skin bronze under the sun, their expressions calm but curious. They carry no weapons, only small spears made of cane. The two groups stare at one another for a long time, the sailors frozen, the islanders cautious but unafraid. A bird cries somewhere in the forest, breaking the silence. Columbus steps forward, raising his hand in greeting. The islanders watch him carefully. Then one of them smiles, small, uncertain, but genuine. They approach slowly, offering fruit, cotton, parrots. Columbus accepts each gift solemnly, nodding, smiling in return. He records it later in his log. They are gentle and without malice. They would make fine servants. With 50 men we could subdue them all. The sailors marvel at their kindness, their innocence. The islanders touch the Europeans' beards and clothing, fascinated by the texture. They laugh when the men's armour clinks. For a time, it feels like peace, two worlds meeting in quiet wonder. But beneath that calm, a different hunger stirs. Columbus's eyes linger not on the people, but on the small ornaments of gold glinting at their necks. He gestures to them, pointing, miming curiosity. The islanders understand. They nod, pointing inland toward other islands. "There is more," they seem to say. Columbus smiles. His journal that night is filled with awe, but also with calculation. "Gold. Always gold," he writes. "The Lord shows the way." For several days the men explore. They wade through streams, gather fruit, marvel at the birds and trees. They call the place paradise, and in many ways it is. Warm, green, untouched. But not everyone sees paradise. Some sailors whisper that it feels too perfect, too quiet. At night they hear strange cries from the forest, voices or animals they can't tell. The stars are brighter here, sharper, unfamiliar. They light fires on the beach and sleep in shifts, their dreams filled with waves and faces. Columbus speaks often of returning home, of showing the Queen the wonders they've found, of leading more voyages, of spreading the faith of Christ to these new lands. His voice burns with conviction. But each time he looks at the horizon, something in him stirs, a sense that this is only the beginning. They travel along the coastline, island to island. Everywhere they go, the people are kind, curious, open. They trade small gifts, beads, bells, mirrors, for parrots, cotton, and tiny flecks of gold dust. The men begin to dream of riches. One morning Columbus notes mountains far in the distance. Their peaks shimmer faintly in the light. He names them Sierra de Cristo Salvador, convinced they hide the riches of the Indies. His obsession deepens. He writes of building a fort, of leaving men behind to gather information. He writes of converting the islanders, of using them as guides. The tone of his journal shifts from wonder to possession. "They are people without faith," he writes. "They love us dearly. They will make good Christians." But already the dynamic has changed. The sailors begin to take more than what is offered. Trinkets vanish. Voices rise. Fear begins to replace curiosity in the eyes of the islanders. The paradise begins to fracture. And still, Columbus presses on, convinced this is Asia, that Chipango and Cathay lie just beyond the next horizon. He cannot see what history will, that these first steps onto the sand have already altered the course of the world forever. The old world has found the new, and nothing, for anyone, will ever be the same again. Weeks pass. The islands seem endless. One after another they rise from the horizon, green, glittering, unspoiled. Each one looks like paradise at first glance, and yet none hold the golden cities Columbus imagined. He names them all as he goes: Santa Maria de la Concepcion, Fernandina, Isabela, layering European names upon places that already had their own. The maps in his cabin grow cluttered with notes and guesses. Every coastline looks similar, every inlet promising and empty. The islanders continue to greet them with kindness. They bring fruit, cotton, spears, and birds of brilliant colour. They laugh when the sailors play music, fascinated by the sound of drums and strings. But the longer the men stay, the less patient they become. The easy wonder of discovery starts to curdle into something else: boredom, greed, the quiet cruelty that grows in men who believe themselves chosen. Columbus, meanwhile, dreams of empire. He writes constantly, lists of resources, descriptions of the land, notes on where gold might be found. He writes of gentle people who would, in his words, make good servants and subjects. He writes of returning with priests, soldiers, and settlers to bring God and the crown to this new world. On Christmas Eve, 1492, the dream nearly ends. The Santa Maria strikes a reef just off the northern coast of Hispaniola. The sound is sudden, violent, a deep cracking that shakes the entire ship. The crew rushes to the deck shouting, the cold night air filled with the crash of waves. Columbus is roused from sleep by the impact. He staggers to the deck shouting orders, but it's too late. The ship is trapped, pinned by the current and breaking apart plank by plank. Through the darkness, the Niña approaches to help, but the surf is too strong. Water floods the lower deck. The men form lines, passing crates, barrels, weapons, anything they can save. The sea hisses around them, swallowing their voices. By dawn, the Santa Maria is gone. Only the mast remains above the surface, like a gravestone jutting from the waves. The loss is devastating. She was the largest of the three, the symbol of the voyage, the ship Columbus trusted most. But he refuses despair. Using the salvaged timbers, he orders a small fort to be built on the nearby shore. He names it La Navidad, the fortress of the Nativity, because it was built on Christmas Day. The islanders help willingly, bringing food and materials. Columbus rewards them with beads and trinkets, smiling, always smiling. When the fort is finished, he leaves behind 39 men, sailors and soldiers, to hold the outpost until he returns. They are to collect gold, explore the island, and gather information. He promises he will be back soon, with more ships, more supplies, and more glory. But the men he leaves behind are restless, arrogant, unprepared. They see themselves as conquerors. Some have already begun taking what they want, from the land and from the people. Columbus doesn't see it, or perhaps he doesn't want to. On January 16th, 1493, he sets sail for Spain aboard the Niña. The Pinta follows. The sea is calmer now, the wind's favourable. As the coastline fades behind him, he feels triumph burning in his chest. He has done what no one believed possible. The voyage home is quicker, but no less perilous. Storms rise again over the Atlantic, tossing the tiny ships like driftwood. Columbus believes he will die. He writes his will on scraps of parchment and seals them in barrels, throwing them into the sea, messages to history in case he never returns. The ships survive. Barely. On March 15th, 1493, the Niña sails into the port of Palos, the same place where it all began. The town erupts in chaos. Bells ring, crowds gather, children shout from the docks. Columbus steps ashore to the roar of voices. He kneels, pressing his hand to the earth as he did on that faraway island. But this time he kisses the ground of Spain. Within weeks he is summoned to court. The journey to Barcelona is long, but every town along the way celebrates him. Priests bless him, nobles bow, and peasants press forward just to touch his cloak. He arrives in the royal palace to fanfare, trumpets, banners, and applause. Ferdinand and Isabella rise to greet him. He kneels, holding out strange gifts, parrots, spices, bright feathers, and a handful of gold dust. The Queen smiles. The King listens carefully as Columbus describes endless islands, friendly people, lands rich with promise. They grant him new titles: Admiral of the Ocean Sea, Viceroy of the Indies. More ships will follow, they tell him, many more. That night Columbus writes again, God made me the messenger of the new heaven and the new earth. He doesn't know what awaits him on his return. He doesn't know that the men he left at La Navidad will all be dead within a year, killed, according to some, for their cruelty. He doesn't know that his discovery will open an age of conquest and suffering far beyond his imagination. For now he believes he has found paradise. He closes his eyes and imagines the sound of waves against white sand, the faces of the people who greeted him, the smell of warm earth and flowers. He dreams of gold. He dreams of God. He dreams of the ocean calling him back. And soon it will. It is September of 1493. In the harbour of Cadiz the air trembles with sound, the bray of trumpets, the clang of hammers, the chant of prayers. Bells ring from church towers as a fleet unlike any before readies to depart. 17 ships. Their sails gleam white in the morning sun, masts creaking beneath the weight of banners bearing the cross of Castile. On the docks thousands gather to watch. Priests bless the ships, swinging censers heavy with smoke. Children wave, soldiers shout, and merchants whisper about gold, glory, and God. Columbus stands at the centre of it all. The admiral of the ocean sea, once doubted and mocked, now a living legend. His first voyage has made him a hero, and his second will make him something greater. He believes this. He feels it with every breath. But this voyage is not one of discovery. It is one of empire. 1,000 men board the ships, sailors, carpenters, priests, soldiers, farmers, even convicts promised pardon if they serve. They carry livestock, seeds, tools and weapons. Horses whinny in the holds. Crates of wheat, sugar cane and vines fill the decks. This time Spain does not send explorers, it sends conquerors. On the morning of September 25th, the fleet leaves port. The wind fills the sails, the water foams beneath the keels, and the sound of cheers fades behind them. The ocean greets them kindly. For weeks the sea is calm, the skies clear. The men sing at night, their voices rising in harmony with the waves. Columbus stands at the bow, eyes fixed on the western horizon, whispering to himself that this is God's work, that heaven guides his hand. On November 3rd, land appears, small green islands rising from the sea, bright as emeralds. The men cheer wildly, some dropping to their knees in prayer. Columbus names them the Lesser Antilles. Each new island receives a new Christian name, as if the act of naming itself brings it into existence. They sail on, island after island. Bright beaches, thick forests, birds of every colour. Columbus sees in them not mystery, but potential. He imagines plantations, chapels, fortresses. He imagines a new Spain. Yet beneath the wonder, something darker stirs. The native peoples they meet are kind, open, curious. They offer fruit, cotton, and gold trinkets. Columbus thanks them, but his eyes linger on the gold, always the gold. He writes in his journal, "With 50 men we could subdue them all and make them do whatever we wish." The fleet presses onward toward Hispaniola, toward La Navidad, the small fort Columbus built from the wreckage of the Santa Maria on his first voyage. He dreams of seeing the men he left behind, brown-skinned from sun and salt, laughing, rich with gold, waiting for him. But as they near the island, the wind dies, the sea turns still, the air grows heavy with silence. They drop anchor offshore and row toward land. What they find is ruin. The fort is gone. Blackened timbers, scattered bones, footprints long since washed away. The jungle has begun to reclaim it, vines crawling through broken walls. The men walk slowly among the ashes, their boots sinking into the soft sand. A crucifix still stands, half buried, leaning toward the sea. They find fragments of armour, torn cloth, the rusted blade of a sword. No survivors. The truth comes in pieces, stories from the local Taíno people. The men left behind at La Navidad had grown cruel. They stole food, took women, demanded tribute. Fights broke out. Then the islanders struck back. The fort was burned. The Spaniards were killed. Columbus listens, his face a mask, his eyes are distant. He orders the dead to be buried, the ruins cleared. He does not speak of blame, he does not mourn. Instead, he commands the men to build again, larger, stronger, more permanent. A new settlement rises from the jungle. He names it Isabella, after the queen. At first, there is hope. The soil is rich, the rivers cool and clear. Fields are planted, huts built, chapels raised. Columbus prays daily, his voice carrying across the camp at dawn. But paradise fades quickly. The sun burns mercilessly. Mosquitoes swarm. The food spoils. Men fall ill with fever, trembling in their beds as flies gather at their lips. The jungle presses in, vines thick as ropes, trees groaning in the heat. The air stinks of rot and sweat. The men grow restless. Some demand to search for gold. Others beg to go home. Discipline cracks. Columbus drives them harder. He believes the gold lies inland, in the mountains. He sends expeditions deep into the forests, their armour gleaming beneath the canopy, swords flashing like mirrors. The marches are brutal. Men collapse from thirst and exhaustion. The rivers swallow horses and supplies. When they return, they bring small amounts of gold dust, just enough to feed the dream. Columbus records it as victory. There is much gold, he writes. The land is full of promise. But in truth, he is desperate. Hunger spreads through the colony. The settlers raid nearby villages for food. The once peaceful Taíno people begin to fight back. Skirmishes break out. Villages burn. The priests write of horror. They baptize prisoners before execution, whispering prayers as soldiers raise their swords. Columbus watches, silent. His faith twists into certainty that this suffering is divine testing, that he has chosen to endure what others cannot. He rules with iron discipline. Men who disobey are whipped, chained, or hung. Those who steal are mutilated. Rumours spread that he has gone mad, and yet, through all of it, he dreams of more ships, more men, more gold. In 1495, he orders a mass roundup of the native people. Hundreds are captured, bound in chains, and forced onto ships bound for Spain, the first slaves to cross the Atlantic. Many die before the voyage ends. In Spain, the king and queen are horrified, or claim to be, yet the gold that trickles in blinds them to what it costs. The colony rots from within. Disease, rebellion, hunger, all of it festers beneath the tropical sun. The dream of paradise becomes a nightmare of conquest. By 1496, the men have turned on their admiral. They accuse him of lies, of tyranny, of betrayal. They say he has cursed the land. Columbus, pale and trembling from fever, gathers what remains of his ships and sails for home. The voyage back to Spain is slow and haunted. The ocean, once his ally, feels different now. Heavy, hostile, endless. He stares at it in silence, his hands shaking as he writes, "I am alone among men. My name is cursed by those I served." He arrives in Spain thin, grey and ill, but alive. The crowds that once cheered him are smaller now. Still, he kneels before Ferdinand and Isabella and tells them that the Indies are vast, that he has only begun. He shows them cages of parrots, baskets of fruit, trinkets of gold, and strange plants that smell of sweetness and smoke. The queen listens kindly. The king frowns but says nothing. They grant him permission for another voyage, though the room is colder now. Less faith, more formality. Columbus bows deeply, his eyes glistening. He still believes he is chosen. He still believes the ocean calls to him. As he leaves the palace, he glances up at the painted ceilings, cherubs and saints, bright against the white stone. For a moment he wonders if they look down with pity. The applause is gone, the glory is dimmed. But his story isn't over. The ocean is waiting, and soon he will answer again. The year is 1498. 6 years have passed since Columbus first crossed the Atlantic, yet the sea still calls to him like a voice only he can hear. His hair has turned grey. His hands shake when he writes. He wakes often in the night, hearing waves against stone where there are none. But the dream has not left him. Spain has changed too. News of his discoveries has spread across Europe. Taverns filled with sailors boasting of golden islands, nobles drawing maps of places they've never seen. Others have already followed his path, traders, rivals, adventurers chasing rumour and treasure. But Columbus cannot rest while others sail his ocean. He writes to the crown, begging for one more voyage. He promises new lands, rivers of gold, the passage to Asia itself. The king hesitates. The queen, softer in heart, grants him permission. 6 ships. Not the grand fleet of 17 that once left Cadiz, but enough. On May 30th, 1498, the ships depart from the port of San Luca de Barrameda. The air is thick with summer heat. Tar melts on the decks. The scent of pitch and salt fills the harbour. Crowds gather again, though smaller this time. The cheers are fainter. To most, Columbus is an old story now, still famous but fading. He stands on the quarter deck of the Santa Maria de Guia, the wind tugging gently at his worn cloak. His sons are with him, Diego, his heir, serious and solemn, and little Fernando, only 10 years old, bright-eyed and restless. They are the future he hopes will outlive his reputation. The ships slip from the harbour at dawn, sails glowing pale in the first light. The bells of the port toll behind them, slow and hollow. Spain disappears again into haze. This time he sails south, into heat no European fleet has ever dared. The days grow unbearable. The air shimmers over the water. Men faint at the ropes. The decks burn their bare feet. Fresh water spoils in the barrels. Salted meat crawls with maggots. Columbus himself grows ill, dizzy beneath the sun, but he refuses to stop. The Lord tests those he favours, he tells the men. The wind dies for days at a time. The ships drift on a glass sea that stinks of decay. The silence presses against them. Some whisper that they have entered the fiery seas of the tropics, the very edge of the world. And then, at last, a cry from the masthead. Land. A faint dark shape on the horizon, trembling in the heat. As the fleet draws closer, the shape becomes mountains, green and immense, rising straight from the sea. Rivers flash silver through the jungle. The air smells of earth and flowers. The men fall silent, awed. Columbus grips the railing. Tears gather in his eyes. "Behold," he whispers, "the paradise of the world." It is July 31st, 1498, when they anchor off the coast of a new island. He names it Trinidad, the Trinity, for its 3 great peaks. The sailors go ashore cautiously, wading through warm, shallow water. The sand is white and fine as powder. Trees crowd, the beach thick with fruit. Bright feathered birds shriek overhead. Streams trickle from the hills, cold and clear. The men drink greedily, laughing, pressing the cool water to their faces. For the first time in weeks, the air feels alive again. Columbus follows them slowly, his legs trembling as he steps onto the sand. He kneels and presses his hand to the ground, whispering a prayer of thanks. He believes he has reached the edge of Asia, perhaps even the Garden of Eden itself. He writes in his log that night by lantern light, his handwriting uneven from exhaustion. The world is round indeed, but here it rises higher toward heaven. The waters are sweet. The land is the most beautiful I have ever seen. Surely this is the earthly paradise. For days they explore the island, sailing along its coast and through channels so narrow that branches scrape the sides of the ships. Dolphins follow them. The sea glows green in the shallows. On August 1st, they see a vast mainland stretching beyond the horizon, rivers pouring into the ocean with a force so great the salt turns fresh for miles. It is the coast of South America, though none of them yet know the word. Columbus names it Tierra de Gracia, the land of grace. The rivers roar like living things. The forest hums with life. The air smells of fruit and rain. He feels certain he has found the source of all creation, the place where the waters of Eden flow down into the world of men. He is overcome with awe. The sickness leaves him for a moment. He falls to his knees and prays aloud, the crew watching in silence. But even here, the shadow of his old dream returns. He asks the natives about gold, always gold. They show him ornaments and trinkets, point inland toward mountains that gleam faintly in the distance. Columbus smiles, the fever in his eyes returning. He notes every direction, every rumour. He cannot rest. The men, exhausted and sun-scorched, beg to turn north toward Hispaniola, to rest, to find food, to see the colony again. Columbus resists for days, still hoping for one more river, one more sign. At last, the wind shifts. He takes it as a sign from God and orders the fleet north. As the ships drift away from the green coast, the men watch the jungle recede into mist. Some whisper that they have just left paradise behind. Columbus stares until it vanishes completely, his hand clutching the rosary at his neck. The sea stretches out again, familiar, endless, silent, and once more he sails toward Hispaniola, unaware that what awaits him there will undo everything he has built. The paradise fades behind him. The storm lies ahead. The wind turns north and the ships obey, their bows lifting and falling as if nodding to a fate already decided. The heat softens. The water darkens from emerald to deep blue. Currents tighten around the keels and the rigging begins its familiar song. Rope against wood, canvas breathing, the long sighs of a living ship. Columbus stands at the rail, eyes narrowed, the rosary warm in his hand. Behind him, Tierra de Gracia dissolves into a green dream. Ahead, the island he once called the heart of his enterprise waits beneath cloud and sun, half remembered and heavy with trouble. For days the fleet threads the Antilles, passing white coves and black cliffs, flashes of lagoon water so bright they look like glass. Frigate birds wheel above them, flying fish skip across the surface like tossed coins. Every evening the sky burns crimson, and every night the constellations return sharper than steel. The men talk less. They have heard rumours carried by coasting canoes, whispers of hunger and quarrels, of Spaniards fighting Spaniards. Columbus listens without comment, face set. He orders the quartermasters to check flour and wine, to count salted pork, to save fresh water. He orders prayers at dawn and again at sunset. On the 8th morning, Hispaniola rises from the horizon like a green wall. The mountains hold their own weather. Clouds sit on their shoulders like cloaks. Rivers cut silver threads to the sea, familiar and yet changed as all places are after absence. The fleet drops anchor in a broad, bright bay. Drums throb faintly from the shore. Smoke lifts out of the trees in blue columns. No Spanish watchboat appears. No signal flag climbs a pole. Only the surf answers. Columbus orders the boats lowered. Armed men take the oars. A priest climbs in with his cross. A clerk holds a small chest of papers sealed with green wax. The admiral sits stern-faced, his boots braced against the ribs of the boat as they pull for the beach. Sand, hot as a stovetop. Palms ticking in the wind. A scatter of broken pottery near the dunes. The foundation of an old storehouse, eaten by vines. Not Isabella. Not the living colony he imagined. Only the leftovers of an intention. They push inland along a trampled path. The jungle presses close, breathes on their necks. Wet leaf, sweet rot. The clean iron smell of river stones. When they reach the clearing at last, the men stop without meaning to. Isabella is a skeleton. The palisade listing. Roofs fallen in. A bell on the chapel floor with a hairline crack down its side. A whetstone on a windowsill half swallowed by moss. In the parade ground, a tether post still stands with a ring of dust where a horse once walked in endless circles. A few faces appear at the edges of the trees, thin, watchful, quick to vanish. Then, from the far end of the square, a knot of Spaniards staggers out of the heat haze. Their clothes hang loose, their beards are wild, eyes sunken, lips cracked white. One wears an officer's sash, stained with old mildew. Another leans on a spear as if it were a crutch. "Admiral," the officer croaks and tries to bow. The story spills out in fragments. Fevers that burn and fade and return. Maize that withers in salt winds. A ship that never came. Quarrels over rations. Blades drawn over a sack of flour. A man shot for stealing a chicken. A priest pleading for mercy. A captain answering with rope. "And the Taíno?" Columbus asks quietly. The officer looks away. "They hid their stores. They left their villages when we approached. Sometimes they ambushed us in the canes. Sometimes they came with gifts and then they were gone. We demanded tribute. The men were hungry." The word tribute sits like a stone in the air. Columbus walks the length of the square without speaking, the survivors shuffling in his wake. He stares at the chapel door, at the broken cart, at the shallow graves marked with weathered sticks. He kneels and touches the dust. Then he rises and begins to give orders in a voice that admits no argument. "Tents there and there. Clear the well. Pull what nails you can from these beams and sort them by size. Sergeant, post watches on the river path and the beach. Father, ring that bell if it can be made to ring. We will bring this place to heal again." He works until night. The men obey. They move like sleepwalkers and then, slowly, like soldiers. A lantern line appears along the street. The bell yields one cracked note and then another. The sound trembles the leaves, but order without food is only choreography. The ration chest shrinks. The flour skins over with grey. Men wake in the night to vomit into the weeds. The surgeon boils his knives and shakes his head. A rainstorm flattens the bean rows in a single hour. Columbus rides out at dawn with a small escort, following a river inland toward villages once friendly. The water is low. Sandbars pucker the channel. Herons cross like grey ghosts. They find fields gone to weeds and empty houses with hearths still warm. On a wall, a child's handprint in ash. Farther on, they meet a party of Taíno hunters, faces painted, bows unstrung, shoulders very still. The chief steps forward with a slow, ceremonial calm that makes the Spaniards feel clumsy. He lays fruit at Columbus's feet and speaks in a measured voice. A translator, young chainscar fading at his wrist, renders the words flatly. "The people are hungry. Too many demands. Too many takings. Leave the villagers alone, and you may buy what you need." Columbus listens. He nods. He speaks softly of the Queen, of Christian friendship, of peace ensured by law. He gives the chief a small bell that makes a bright, innocent sound and promises fair exchange. For 7 days there is trade, maize for beads, cassava for knives, cotton for bells. The air in the square lightens. The men on watch begin to hum again. On the 8th day, a corporal takes a basket from a girl and pays her nothing. She runs. He laughs. Someone jeers. An arrow finds a shield. A musket cracks from the Spanish line, and a man falls in the river. By sundown the path is empty again. The forest closes its mouth. The next weeks harden into pattern, sorties inward to seize food, small ambushes, burned patches of garden. 2 men found with their throats opened in cane that whispers when the wind comes. Columbus posts whipping poles in the square and has thieves tied to them. He orders a census of every Spaniard in the colony and a count of every bushel of grain. He sends messengers to the coastal settlements demanding that provisions be diverted upriver. From his table beneath a patched awning he signs orders with a careful, shaking hand. The ink feathers in the damp. The seal takes longer to cool. At night he writes by a guttering lamp. There is treachery among the settlers. There is rebellion among the Indians. God tests me as he tested Job, yet I shall prove faithful. Morning. A patrol returns with 3 men bound by fibre rope and a sack of green maize taken from a field. Afternoon. Rain like nails, hammering on canvas, turning streets to porridge. Evening. The surgeon opens the belly of a man bloated with fever and finds nothing to save. The priests move through the camp like white ghosts. They baptize infants. They marry the already married. They hear confessions in which the penitent cannot say what sin they confess, only a sense of something broken beyond naming. Murmurs grow into arguments, arguments into factions. One lieutenant says the admiral starves the soldiers while saving casks for himself. Another swears he saw Columbus kneeling in the mud, muttering at the ground. The clerk says the store's ledger has been altered. A carpenter says he'll take a canoe and live with the Indians, who at least have fish and pineapples. A fist flies in the mess. A knife appears and disappears. Someone laughs too loud and too long. Columbus answers with rules and punishments because they are the tools he still trusts. He orders the lash, the stocks, the public confession. He posts at the gate a placard in a learned hand. By order of the admiral, ration theft shall be hanged. Blasphemy shall be whipped. Desertion shall be shot. The placard warps in the weather. Someone draws a crude crown above the words and then crosses it out. Rain breaks into a season of fierce, clean days. The sea goes blue as a blade. The mountains sharpen along the sky. Columbus sends 2 caravels to sweep the coast for supply and news. One returns leaking with 5 men too weak to climb the ladder. The other never returns at all. In the valley beyond the ridge, villagers gather under the ceiba tree. Elders speak slowly. Runners slip between hamlets with cords knotted into messages. Baskets of stones appear behind door frames. Hard faces, short replies. Songs that used to be sung for welcome are not sung now. The Spaniards feel the change the way animals feel a storm. There is an afternoon when everything seems to hold its breath. The air is bright and perfectly still. Birds vanish from the grove. In that silence the colony hears, far off, a single drum struck 3 times, then nothing. The following dawn, a work party harvesting cassava at the edge of the cane finds the print of a bare foot where no one should have been. A guard post finds its water jar laced with herbs that make the belly cramp. A mule collapses between the storehouse and the kitchen with a thin black dart in its flank. Columbus calls council. The captains assemble with dust on their boots and doubt in their eyes. They argue maps and patrol schedules and tribute quotas. They argue the soul and its salvation. A priest says mercy will save them. A sergeant says steel will. The admiral listens, eyes sunk deep, lips pale. When they are done, he dismisses them and stands alone in the ruined doorway of the chapel. The cracked bell leans on a bench. A lizard blinks on the sill. He rubs his temple with 2 fingers and at last says aloud, only to the empty room, "Lord, show me the narrow way." That night a wind rises. No storm, only the kind that makes men restless. It rattles the pots and flickers the lanterns and tugs at the seam of every tent. Somewhere beyond the palisade a woman sings, and the song does not end. It goes on and on until it becomes the sound of the wind itself. In the morning, a delegation of Spaniards waits for him in the square. Not soldiers this time, but settlers. A mason, a baker, a man who once kept books in Seville, and now has a cough that will not leave. They come hat in hand, but they stand in a line that does not break. "Admiral," the bookkeeper says, voice polite as court, "we ask to be released from our oaths and return to Spain. There is no gold, there is only death." Columbus looks at them a long time. His face does not change. "Spain is behind you," he says quietly. "The oath is your bridge. Burn it, and the sea takes you." They do not move. In the afternoon, 24 soldiers meet under the palm that casts the longest shade. They speak carefully, testing one another with single sentences, with glances, with a name not spoken too loudly. Bobadilla, the rumour of a royal investigator, the hope of a new governor. Men who would have died for the admiral 3 years ago now balance loyalty against hunger like weights in a shop. Columbus senses the tilt. He orders a muster. He rides the line on a gaunt horse with a scar at its shoulder and speaks of the crown, of law, of the wages due to courage. He speaks of the sea he has crossed and will cross again for them. He speaks of God in sentences that have the rhythm of surf. Advance and withdraw, advance and withdraw. Some heads lift, some do not. The jungle's edge seems closer than it was in the morning. At sunset, the last light lays a coin of gold on the chapel roof and then slides away. The cracked bell gives one accidental note. The river makes its patient sounds. In the distance, a green hill holds its shadow like a secret. Night comes with its ordinary mercies, cool air, fewer flies, the soft click of beetles in the grass, and its ordinary punishments, the coughs, the bad dreams, the empty place in the mess where a man sat yesterday. Columbus writes one more entry before the lamp gutters. "They will say I am cruel, because I did not let the colony die." He seals the page with wax and presses the device cleanly, hand steady for the first time in weeks. Then he sits very still and listens for the sea. It is there, beyond the hills and the cane and the angry men, making that same old sound it made the first day he left Palos, endless and patient, like a judge who never raises his voice. Dawn will bring a sail at last, and with it a man who carries parchment thicker than wood, an authority sharpened like a blade. But that belongs to the next telling, for now the colony holds its breath. and the Admiral stands beneath a cracked bell, already hearing the faint clink of chains that have not yet closed. Morning breaks grey and breathless. Mist drifts off the river, crawling low across the square. A single cry goes up from the lookout on the palisade, a sail. At first, the men do not cheer. Too many false ships have come and gone, merchants lost, deserters returned, wrecks adrift. But this one keeps its line steady, bearing toward the harbour with the confidence of a vessel that knows exactly where it is going. Flags snap, royal colours bright against the clouded sky. Francisco de Bobadilla, Royal Commissioner, Governor in the name of their Majesties. He has come with orders sealed in green wax and signed by Ferdinand himself. The harbour stirs, soldiers scramble to the wharf, the settlers pour from their huts. Some kneel and cross themselves, others smile, unable to hide their relief. A few glance toward the Admiral's quarters, wondering what he is thinking. Columbus steps out at last, the sun breaking faintly behind him. He looks thinner than ever, beard streaked white, eyes dark hollows. He watches the new ship anchor, listens to the splash of its chain, and knows, without a word spoken, that his hour has come. Bobadilla comes ashore in polished armour, parchment in hand. He bows stiffly, then reads aloud, "By command of their Majesties, the Admiral Christopher Columbus is relieved of his duties and shall submit to inquiry." The words hang in the humid air. The soldiers shift their weight. Someone coughs. Columbus nods once. "Inquiry," he repeats softly, as if tasting the word. Bobadilla does not wait for argument. He orders the royal standard raised above the fort and the keys to the storehouses surrendered. He appoints new officers on the spot. The men, hungry for a new order, obey without hesitation. Within an hour, Columbus's authority evaporates. His seal, his ledgers, his chair at the head of the table, handed over to strangers. The priests bless the transition as the will of the crown. The drums that once mark the Admiral's commands now sound for another. At dusk, 2 guards enter his quarters carrying iron shackles. They hesitate, waiting for resistance. None comes. Columbus extends his wrists. The metal bites his skin, cold and absolute. The sound of the closing lock echoes through the room, sharper than thunder. Outside, the colony gathers in silence as he's led across the square. The same men who once swore by him now avert their eyes. Some cross themselves again, uncertain for whom. Children peer from doorways. The cracked bell tolls once, by accident or by fate. They take him to the ship under guard. The plank creaks beneath his boots. The ocean he once commanded laps softly at the hull, as though welcoming him back with mock tenderness. When they set sail for Spain, the sky is bruised with storm. Columbus sits below deck in chains, the iron scraping rhythmically with the ship's motion. Rain drums overhead. Water seeps through the seams and drips onto his hands. He does not curse. He writes, "I am a servant of God and the crown, unjustly accused. They may bind my body, but not my cause. These chains I will keep, that I may show how faith is tested." The voyage home is long, quiet, full of creaking and coughs, and the whisper of the sea against wood. Sailors step lightly near his cabin, afraid to look in. Sometimes they hear him praying. Sometimes they hear nothing at all. Near the Azores the storm breaks. Lightning splits the sky. The ship heaves. Barrels crash loose. Men shout in the dark. Columbus holds fast to the beam above his head, feeling the whole world tilt and roar. For a moment he thinks the ocean means to claim him once and for all. Then, as quickly as it came, the tempest passes. Morning reveals a sea washed clean, the air sharp with salt and sunlight. He opens his eyes to it and whispers, "Still mine." Weeks later, the ship glides into Cadiz. The dockside crowd falls silent at the sight. The great admiral of the ocean sea, brought home in chains. Some pity him, others smile. The story will travel faster than any ship. The hero turned prisoner, the discoverer unmade by his own empire. Guards march him through narrow streets toward Seville, where royal messengers await. Windows open as he passes. Voices murmur prayers, or gossip, or nothing at all. He keeps his gaze forward, shoulders straight despite the weight of iron. At last, before the throne, he kneels. The Queen, moved by pity, orders the chains removed. The king studies him in silence. The clerk reads the charges: misrule, cruelty, disobedience. Columbus listens, hands trembling, then lifts his eyes to Isabella. "Majesty," he says, his voice hoarse but steady. "I gave you another world. I found no gold fit for your crown, only a land without end, and for that I am punished. Yet I would sail again tomorrow if you asked it." The Queen's eyes fill with tears. "Rise, Admiral," she says softly. "You have served us as God willed." The court applauds, but the sound is hollow. His titles are restored on parchment, not in truth. Others already command the new fleets. The maps are no longer his. That night, alone in his chamber, Columbus sets the chains on the table before him. He runs his fingers over the metal and feels, for the first time, how cold ambition can become. Outside, the streets of Seville hum with life, merchants' laughter, the smell of wine and oranges. Somewhere beyond them, beyond the western sea, the colonies he began are changing forever, their people learning new languages, new gods, new griefs. He closes his eyes and hears the surf again. It is always there. "The ocean is endless," he writes one final time that night, "and so is the will of God." The ink dries, the candle gutters. The man who once thought he owned the horizon now drifts within it, nameless in the noise of the world he set in motion. Soon he will sail one last time. June 1503. The 4 ships of the expedition, once proud and white-sailed, now hang together like driftwood. Hulls eaten by worms, masts cracked, sails patched with shirts and scraps of rope. The sea leaks in faster than men can pump it out. Off the northern coast of Jamaica, a reef tears the belly of the Vizcaína. The Capitana follows, her timbers splitting with a sound like thunder. The other 2 caravels stagger closer and run themselves aground beside her. The fleet that once dreamed of Asia dies there, half in sand, half in surf. Columbus orders what remains of the cargo brought ashore: barrels of biscuit gone soft, a few casks of wine, a box of nails, his journals wrapped in oilcloth. The men build shelters from the hulls, setting them on the beach like ribs of a giant skeleton. They call the camp Santa Gloria. It will be their prison for the next year. The first weeks pass in fever and disbelief. The sea roars endlessly against the coral, mocking them with its promise of home. The sun burns the skin raw, the rain soaks everything it spares. Sharks circle just beyond the reef. In the distance the mountains rise green and indifferent. The local people, Arawak fishermen, approach cautiously in canoes. They bring fruit, cassava and fish in exchange for beads and knives. For a time, trade is peaceful. The Spaniards speak of rescue. 2 volunteers, Diego Mendez and Bartolomé Fieschi, promise to attempt the impossible, to paddle a canoe hundreds of miles east to Hispaniola and beg for help. Columbus watches them push off through the surf, tiny figures swallowed by distance. He blesses them with a trembling hand. When the canoes vanish, he feels the silence close like water. Weeks pass, no rescue. The supplies dwindle. The Arawak grow wary of endless demands. The Spaniards steal food, threaten, beg. Skirmishes flare and fade. Columbus, sick and half-blind, confines himself to a small hut built from the stern of his flagship. His son Fernando tends him, brushing flies from his face, reading the Bible aloud in the evenings. In the camp, despair hardens into madness. Factions form. Some men swear Columbus has cursed them, others call him a prophet. One night a group led by the brothers Porus breaks away, seizing weapons and a boat frame. They vow to seize the Arawak canoes and sail for Hispaniola themselves. The admiral, hearing the news, lies still and whispers only, "Let the sea decide who is right." The rebels vanish into the dark. For months the camp is divided. Loyalists on one side of the beach, mutineers on the other. They steal from each other's fires, stalk each other's sentries, trade insults that grow into arrows. Then the famine deepens. The Arawak stop coming. The ocean becomes mirror still. Even the birds fall silent. The men grow thin as ropes. Skin cracks, teeth loosen. Columbus's beard turns white. His eyes sink into shadow. In early 1504, with starvation close and morale gone, he opens his Bible and finds a passage about signs in the heavens. That evening he sends word to the Arawak chiefs. He tells them that the Christian God is angered by their refusal to feed his servants, and that within 3 nights he will darken the moon as a warning. The chiefs listen, puzzled but curious. The sky that night is clear, the moon bright as a lantern. They shrug and depart. 3 nights later the eclipse comes. The moon rises full and red, then slowly fades to black. The stars brighten. The sea glows silver. Cries rise from the village. Drums pound. The Arawak rush to the beach with baskets of food, begging the admiral to intercede. Columbus steps from his hut, face pale with fever, eyes reflecting the dying light. He raises his hands and prays aloud. The shadow passes, the moon returns, the people fall to their knees. For a time, the camp lives again. Food returns, trade resumes, but the men are ghosts now, thin, hollow, bound by exhaustion. Columbus writes by lantern, "God has not forgotten me, though he keeps me here for reasons I cannot fathom." Months slide by. The sea changes colour with the seasons. Storms come and go. The sound of hammers fades, replaced by the slow breathing of the tide. Some men die quietly in their sleep. Others walk into the surf and do not return. The mutineers send word from upriver, begging forgiveness. Columbus answers, "We are already forgiven. Only the sea remembers." In June, a sail appears at last, a small caravel from Hispaniola sent by Mendez, who has survived his impossible journey. The camp erupts in shouts. Men weep openly. Columbus, too weak to stand, whispers, "Praise be to him who does not forget the lost." The rescue takes weeks. The ships cannot carry everyone at once. They ferry men in groups. Columbus insists on leaving last. He watches each boat depart until the beach is empty but for his own shadow. When at last they come for him, he is carried aboard on a litter, wrapped in a blanket that smells of smoke and seaweed. As Jamaica fades behind them, he stares at the receding island. "It was a good place to wait," he says softly. "God hid me there until I was finished." The wind fills the sails. The sea, for the first time in a year, sounds kind. The waiting is over. Now comes the reckoning. The ship that carries him home moves slowly, her sails patched, her timbers heavy with salt. The ocean is calm, too calm, the kind of stillness that feels like holding one's breath. Columbus lies beneath a canvas awning on deck, the air thick with heat, a rosary coiled in his fingers. His hair is white now, his face drawn and hollow, the skin around his eyes a pale grey. Each breath seems a negotiation. Hispaniola fades behind him. The men avoid his gaze. He can feel their eyes only when he looks away. Half pity, half disbelief that he still lives. Even the youngest among them know they are carrying a man history has already decided about. The voyage to Spain takes months. He barely eats, living on bits of fruit and broth. Some nights he insists on being carried to the deck so he can see the stars. He stares at them for hours, silent, lips moving in private prayer. To Fernando, his son, he says, "They do not move as they used to. Either the heavens have changed, or I have." In November, they reach San Lucar. There is no crowd waiting this time. No banners, no bells, no fanfare. Only dock workers unloading crates, and a few officials sent to record arrivals. News of his return spread slowly, met with polite indifference. The world has moved on. Ferdinand and Isabella are both ill. The Queen, who once championed his cause, lies near death in Medina del Campo. He writes to her, begging for an audience, and is granted one. The journey inland is hard. Mud roads, winter rain, coughing fits that leave him dizzy. When he finally reaches her chamber, the Queen can barely lift her head. Her hair, once golden, is white as snow. "My lady," he says, kneeling painfully at her bedside, "I have done all that God allowed me. The Indies are yours, though I have suffered much." She nods faintly, her voice a whisper. "You have done what none before you could." He weeps, not for pity, but because he feels the last thread of his purpose begin to fray. A few days later, Isabella dies. The bells toll across Castile. Columbus locks himself in his room and writes all night, the ink running where his tears fall. The Queen is dead. With her dies the half of my world. Grief turns to sickness. He shivers constantly, his joints swollen, his mind wandering between scripture and memory. He dreams of waves breaking on unseen shores, of the green light of the Indies, of laughter from men long dead. Yet he still writes letters to the king, demanding the honours once promised, the 10th of all wealth from the new lands, the titles of viceroy and governor, restitution of his name. He signs them El Almirante del Mar Océano, though no one uses the title anymore. Replies come slowly, polite and empty. The crown has new priorities now, new colonies, new captains, new wealth flowing from across the sea. His final years are spent in Valladolid, a quiet inland town far from the sound of waves. He lives in a small house near a monastery, tended by servants who whisper that he talks to himself at night. He limps through the corridors, clutching a map that has begun to crumble at the edges, muttering about a strait, about gold, about paradise. Sometimes Fernando reads to him, passages from Marco Polo, from scripture, from his own journals. The old man listens with eyes closed, nodding faintly as if confirming his own memories. "Write it all again," he says, "so they will know." The priest visits often. He confesses long wandering sins, pride, anger, ambition, and then insists they were all done for God. If the Lord opened a door, he says, was it sin to walk through it? The priests never answer. They only bless him and leave quietly. On May 20th, 1506, Christopher Columbus dies. He is 54 years old. The records say he passed peacefully, whispering the name of Christ. Some claim his last words were, "Into thy hands, O Lord, I commend my spirit." Others say he murmured, "The sea, the sea." His body is buried in Valladolid, later moved, then moved again, first to Seville, then across the ocean he discovered, to Santo Domingo, then back to Seville once more. No one is certain where he truly rests. His bones, like his legacy, never found a home. Outside, the world he began has already changed beyond recognition. Ships leave Spain every month now, carrying settlers, soldiers, and slaves. The Caribbean islands grow cities of stone. Empires stretch their maps across oceans. The age of exploration has become the age of conquest. Yet somewhere, beneath all the noise of history, there remains that first silence, the sound of a wooden ship drifting west, sails full, stars wheeling overhead, the ocean breathing softly around it. A handful of men, unsure and afraid, sailing toward a horizon no one had ever crossed. That moment still exists, somewhere between memory and eternity. And in that moment the world was still new. The sea remembers,